Afternoon, guys. Dr. Ken Nordberg here again. Whitetails have 5 stages of alarm, depending on what they see, as far as hunters are concerned. And once they got you sized up, which might be just take a split second or might take 15 minutes before they decide, they'll react in one of 5 ways, and it varies according to how dangerous the situation might appear to the deer. And we're talking about mature whitetail deer that have survived 3 or more hunting seasons. Now, it's kind of true of fawns and yearlings and 2.5-year-old bucks, but they're a little more erratic in their responses because they haven't got a lot of experience yet. We're talking about deer that you hardly ever see because they respond in one of these 5 ways, depending on what they decide to do, based on what they see you doing. So, it's kind of good to know these things. There are things you can do to reduce the level of alarm of a deer in sight, keeping it from abandoning its range and perhaps giving you another better chance of taking it hours or days later. Now, stage 3 alarm is a little more serious. Now, here's a deer. It might be a safe distance away, or it might be even closer. And it knows, we kind of talked about that already, it knows something dangerous is near. It might not know where it is or what it is, but whatever it heard or smelled or saw move convinced him something dangerous is very new. And this is really worrisome to this deer. In this case, the tail will come up. It might not come all the way up. It might not become fully erect, but it'll probably spread out a little bit. It'll become fanned. And the tufts of fur that cover the tarsal glands and the hind legs, it can become erect as well. And when that happens, those glands there will start pouring out this ammonia-like odor that warns all the deer downwind in the ever-enlarging triangular area downwind. Something dangerous is over there where that odor is coming from. Now, this deer won't know where the danger is exactly, or even if it's dangerous. It might not be dangerous. It might be a stand hunter, for example, sitting in a tree or on ground level. Nothing to worry about. But until I know for sure, now, boy, what can really get a doe, especially going at that point, is to hear another sound like it heard, or see something move, or get another whiff of something that's a human over there, all right, but not be sure of where it is or whether it's actually dangerous. And some of them just can't stand it. Their tails will be fanned, the tail will come up horizontal or almost vertical, and they'll start snorting. Snort, snort, snort. And I think they do it to make whatever it is that they're worried about move. Add to what that doe needs to see or hear or smell to make sure that this is something dangerous. But whatever it is, when it gets to that point, you'll start seeing that tail coming up. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to run away, but at this point, they're so close to it, they're poised to start leaping away as fast as possible. Well, even then, at this point, the tail might be up there, and it might be really worried about what's over there. But if you can outlast them, if you don't let that doe hear anything, or see anything, or smell anything after that, even when they get to that point, the stage 3 alarm, that tail can finally start to go down and relax and become unfanned again. But keep in mind, one little extra thing at this point can make that deer turn and bound away as fast as it can go. So this is getting to be kind of serious alarm. Now, deer that bound away or maybe just trot real fast, man, they can move fast trotting too. That's serious alarm because this deer that's doing that is very likely abandoning its range. I mean, this is really dangerous. I got to get out of here. I don't want to be in the same area. It isn't the kind of thing where they just go 100 yards and stop and look back, and if nothing's pursuing them, everything's okay. Now I can feed again. It's not that kind of alarm. This one is going to get out of its range for a while. And anytime the tail goes up and the tarsal tufts become erect, that's a deer that may or may not abandon its range. If, like I said, a deer that's like that, now, if they weren't sure about what they really needed to run away, they may only run 100 yards and stop and turn and look back and see and try to decide if anything's following them, pursuing them. And in that case, a deer might decide, well, I was wrong, I can stay in my range. But if a deer has been alarmed to that point several times during the hunting season, this is getting to be too much because hunters are forever alerting and alarming this deer to that point. It might decide it's too darn dangerous to remain on my range. So it might, at that point, decide get out of the range and stay off range for a while. Now, young deer, like fawns and yearlings, they'll run off range as well, but usually they want to go back. They want to be with mama. They don't know where she is. Maybe sometimes, they get left behind. They'll go back usually within 24 hours, a young deer like that. An older doe might not, would probably stay away a little longer, up to 4 days, but they're worried about the babies. I got to get back and see where they are, and that kind of thing. Unless they keep hearing shots and voices back there where they live and on their range, they might not come back for the entire hunting season. But big bucks, they're not the kind that's going to come back in 24 hours or 4 days, normally. They are more likely to stay off range for the entire season. That doesn't mean they give up breeding. Older bucks might hole up in an adjacent swamp or bog, forested, and stay there, and knowing that any does that are in heat are going to be looking for them. And they're, if breeding is going on, those big bucks are just reeking with musk, scalp musk from their heads, and tarsal musk. Oh, all kinds of, they smell really bad. Well, any doe that's downwind of that buck, a mile away even, will know how to find the buck, or go straight into the wind to where that buck is. So, in this case, the big dominant breeding bucks can stay close and still take care of all the breeding during the hunting season, even though it's off range. And quite often when the doe does go off range, it goes to the same area the big bucks are likely to go off range, so they can all end up together in a swamp area, bedding on some little areas that are dry, little humps out there in the swamp, little dry spots. But anyway, back to stage 3. Like we're saying, stage 3 now, that's a serious stage, but that doe or that buck, if it doesn't see or hear anything more from you while it's standing there trying to decide what to do, up to 15 minutes, maybe longer, then their tails go back down, the tarsal tufts will relax, and that deer can remain where it is. Or it might decide, well, I think I'll feel a little more comfortable if I go over to that feeding area that's over this way, and I'll feed there now for a while. But it won't abandon its range in a case like that. Now, I remember last time I saw stage 4 alarm. I was on my way, nonstop, going nonstop. I just came out of crossing a bog we call Bootsuck Bog, which is really flooded this year. You can't even get across the thing unless maybe we're wearing hip boots. There's so much water out there. But you got to cross Bootsuck Bog and I get up to the highland, and it made a little turn up there where on near the top of this highland where it kind of flattens out. It made a turn, and I was heading toward a stand site I had overlooking a clear cut a few blocks away. And so there I was walking along this deer trail, and all of a sudden, here's a buck bounding ahead of me. And which, you know, that I don't have that happen a lot, but it did in this case, and it was probably more the buck's fault than my fault, because normally you wouldn't get close enough to see a buck bounding away from you. It was only like 25, 30 yards away, about that far away. And brought my gun up immediately, and I got a glimpse of it before it disappeared, and it had antlers, and they were multi-tined antlers. Now, as the buck was going away, you know, it was clearly greatly alarmed. You know, it had tarsal tufts. I didn't notice the tarsal tufts, but surely they were erect, and then its tail was up. But one thing I noticed about the tail, it wasn't fanned. It was still thin. And as it was running, it didn't seem to be taking huge bounds, maybe only 8 feet long instead of, you know, a big buck can jump 25 feet, maybe 8, 10 feet. And as it was going, that tail was wagging from side to side, like that. Now, when a buck or any deer reacts like that, when you see it going, all is not lost. Because when a deer reacts that way, it's thinking, I gotta go, but I'm not sure whether this is serious enough to really be running hard by making huge bounds. This deer is bounding, but not taking long bounds, and that unfanned tail wagging like that also means the same thing. It doesn't, it's not sure it needs to be really seriously alarmed. And whenever you see a deer do that, moving in that manner, it isn't going to go far. It might go just 100 yards and it'll stop, and it might stand there for a while wondering if something's going to be pursuing it or not. And if it doesn't pick up that kind of information soon, like snapping branches under the steps of a hunter, you know, like that kind of, or seeing things like that, or hearing something that says there's a hunter over there. None of that, it doesn't see any of that or hear anything like that. It may just, from that point on, just walk to wherever it was. In this case, the buck walked into that clear cut where I was heading. And when I got there, and sneaking, because I thought I would likely see that buck any time, first thing I saw was a doe and fawn way over on the other side of the clear cut over on the left. And they were feeding on grasses over there, and oh, geez, look at that. Then there's wooded little island in the clear cut out this way from my stand, and there was 2 deer in there as well, and I didn't see any antlers on either of them. But look at that. It's 5 deer well, 4 deer within sight. And so I was kind of watching them. Then I heard something snap right down in front of me, and I looked there, and here's that buck eating browse, only about 20 yards away. It was that close. It was amazing. One of the easiest harvests I ever had, taking a mature buck. It wasn't easy getting them back to camp. It took me half a day to manage that, but how easy that was. Well, when you got a buck making big long bounds, or any deer, you know, long bounds, 20, 25 foot long bounds, 8 feet up in the air. I mean, that buck is or that doe or those deer, are really moving and moving fast. And when you see a deer like that, that's the worst, well, fifth stage 5 alarm, that's the worst kind of alarm to see. If you see that happening a lot where you're hunting, you're not hunting properly. Because those deer they're heading off range no matter what. That buck is so alarmed, he's not going to want to be back in his square mile home range again for quite a while. Especially if he hears any voices or shooting or wood chopping or anything else going on in that square mile. He's going to stay out of there. That's the worst kind of alarm possible. So that should dictate. If you see a lot of that where you're hunting, you're not only having a very hard time getting a deer, much worse time trying to get a big buck if that's what you're after. And very short, you can clean out your range if your deer are reacting that way, or your hunting area, in a day or two. And then pretty soon you're wondering if there was any deer there. And maybe if they're snowing around, you might not see any fresh tracks in that square mile after that. And it'll be there for days and days and days, and you'll go home and say the wind was wrong, or too many hunters out there and chased them out, or whatever. But that's not an uncommon thing. So when you make a deer react like that, that kind of alarm, boy, you're just you're making all the deer in your hunting area abandon the area. Then some of them might go 5-6 miles to some safe place before they even stop. So that's not something you want to happen. Now, that's half the story. Here's the other half. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries, my website bookstore, and much more.